You know that little box with the blinking lights sitting in the corner of your room? Your router. You probably think of it as the guardian of your internet connection, right? But what if it wasn't? What if that guardian was actually a ghost in the machine, secretly working for someone else? Today, we're going to break down a pretty wild global cyber threat that turns that device you trust into a weapon in a hidden digital war.
So, where does this all start? Well, it begins with a real puzzle that had security teams all over the world scratching their heads. They started seeing thousands of these super stealthy cyber attacks hitting major online services. The digital fingerprints were, well, they were everywhere, but the attackers themselves, totally invisible. For the folks investigating this, it was literally like chasing ghosts. They were staring down a massive coordinated campaign, but every time they tried to trace the attackers, the tracks just vanished. They just blended into the normal noise of the internet, which made stopping the assault seem almost impossible.
Now, this wasn't just random chaos. This was a calculated, strategic attack. The target, Microsoft 365 accounts on a global scale. And the method they were using is called password spraying. It's basically trying a few common passwords against thousands of accounts, but they were doing it in a very specific way, an evasive way, designed to fly right under the radar of normal security systems.
And here's the part that's both brilliant and really, really dangerous. The attack traffic wasn't coming from some sketchy server farm you could just identify and blacklist. No, it was scattered across thousands, tens of thousands of completely legitimate home internet addresses. I mean, how do you block that? You'd have to cut off tons of innocent users. This whole situation led investigators to a pretty shocking discovery.
So, the trail didn't lead to some fortified data center or a shadowy hacker collective. It led right into living rooms and home offices all over the world. Maybe even one that looks a lot like yours. The weapon wasn't some piece of advanced high-tech spy gear. It was something much, much more common. The source of this entire ghost network turned out to be millions of ordinary small office and home office routers, what we call SOHO routers. You know, these everyday devices just sitting on shelves and desks everywhere had been secretly hijacked and turned into an army of digital sleeper agents.
So how does your simple home router end up as a soldier in a global cyber attack? Well, it becomes part of what's known as a botnet. And in this particular case, this whole massive operation was only possible because these routers all shared a few key weaknesses. It made them the perfect, unsuspecting targets.
This statement, right from the manufacturer TP-Link, gets right to the heart of the problem. When a piece of hardware reaches its end of service or end of life, it means the company stops pushing out security updates. It's basically a sitting duck. Any vulnerability found after that point becomes a permanent, unfixable open door for attackers.
Okay, let's get into the forensics. How did they actually pull this digital heist off? It wasn't just a brute force attack. No, this was elegant. It was a clever, two-part exploit that basically acted like a master key, letting attackers silently unlock and seize total control of these routers whenever they wanted.
Think of it like a two-stage break-in. It's a classic 1-2 punch that we see all the time in the security world. First, the attackers exploit one vulnerability to just swipe the router's credentials, the keys to the kingdom, right? And they don't even need a password to do it. Then, with those stolen keys in hand, they just waltz right through the front door and exploit a second vulnerability to get total control.
Okay, let's break it down technically. The first vulnerability, that's the lockpick, it's an authentication bypass that lets an attacker just reach in and grab the password file. The second one, that's the takeover. Once they're logged in with those stolen credentials, they use a flaw in, of all places, the parental control page to inject their own malicious commands. This gives them the highest level of control you can possibly get, root access. So, if you look at the official severity scores, you can see each flaw is pretty serious on its own. But the real danger, the critical threat, is when they're chained together. This is a classic tactic where attackers combine a couple of medium-risk issues to create one catastrophic, high-impact failure. The end result is a full device takeover, done remotely, without needing any credentials to start with.
All right, so now we know the weapon and exactly how it was fired. The next critical piece of this whole puzzle is attribution. Who is the mastermind behind this massive global operation?
While threat intelligence researchers have managed to attribute this entire campaign to a China-linked group they've code-named Storm-0940. This group is running a massive botnet, which they call Quad 7, and its one strategic objective is to compromise Microsoft 365 accounts all over the world. So here's the kicker. Your router isn't just attacking other people, it's being used as a disguise. The attackers turn each and every compromised device into what's called a proxy. Think of it like a way to launder their attack traffic. By routing their attacks through thousands of legitimate home IP addresses, all their malicious activity just blends in with the normal hum of the internet, making them almost impossible to track down.
Now, this discovery didn't just happen overnight. From a security research perspective, this threat was growing in the shadows for years. And once the full scale of the operation became clear, its public disclosure kicked off a coordinated, really urgent response.
This timeline really shows you the life cycle of a modern cyber threat. It starts way back in February 2023, when researchers first found the flaw and did the right thing. They privately and responsibly disclosed it to TP-Link. That's coordinated vulnerability disclosure in action. But by November, it was being exploited so widely that TP-Link did something rare. They released a patch for a discontinued product. Then, fast forward to September 2025, and the U.S. government's cybersecurity agency, CISA, officially adds both flaws to its must-patch list, which basically mandates a fix for all federal agencies.
So, we've unraveled the mystery, we've identified the weapon, and we have unmasked the culprit. Now let's talk about defense. This is about what you can actually do to secure your little corner of the internet. First things first, you gotta know if you're at risk. The main models are specific versions of the TP-Link Archer C7 and the TLWR841N and ND. But, and this is important, you have to check the actual label on the bottom of your router. Why? Because some internet service providers, like Ziggo over in Europe, actually handed these out to customers with their own branding on them.
Okay, here are 3 concrete things you can do right now. 1. Update your firmware. Yes, even if the device is old. TP-Link released that emergency patch in November 2024. Go to their support site, find it, and install it. 2. Disable remote management. This feature lets people access your router from the internet. It should be off by default, but you absolutely have to check. And 3, and this is really the most important long-term fix, replace your end-of-life hardware. It's the only real way to guarantee you'll get security updates in the future.
Look, at the end of the day, this whole story isn't just about one brand or one specific vulnerability. The real takeaway here is that an unsupported, out-of-date device on your network isn't just making your Netflix buffer, it's a massive security liability. It makes you a target, and it can turn you into an unwilling accomplice in attacks against everybody else.
So I'll leave you with this thought. In a world where every single thing is connected, what is the real cost of leaving just one outdated, vulnerable device plugged in? It turns out, protecting our global digital world often starts with paying a little more attention to the oldest piece of tech in our own homes.